Hello there, and welcome to the tour of the Pathfinder class personal ferry, the 14th vehicle in my Wimpomania line of vehicles. My name is Wimpoman, and I am the Chief Designer, Chief Builder, Chief Architect, and of course Chief Dumbass behind the Pathfinder class update project. That's right, this is another update build from pre-1.0. So before I show you around the updated version, I'm first going to show you around the original ship. So here it is, the original Pathfinder, and as you can see, it's changed slightly, but not a lot. Now, as I said, this was built pre-1.0, so before the full release, which meant there was no CPU, no weights and volumes, so there was no CPU extensions, no CPU cost. There was no container controllers and extensions. There was also no shields at the time. Now, those familiar with my builds might recognize that this is simply a CV version of the original version of the Initiate Shuttle, which is clearly an SV. So I liked the shape, so I turned it into a CV. Some of you might notice that I've removed a layer, that one here, there-ish. Otherwise, so the interior of this is 3 blocks tall, and I didn't want the interior of this to be the same in the large grid size. But other than that, it is simply a CV version of one of those, or the original of that. So, some of the changes include I no longer use the, or I have no longer used the larger turrets, and I've kept just the sentry turrets, and we will see those when I get them out later. The cockpit is similar, although it's more similar to what is now the updated Initiate than it is to the older one. There's no longer a ramp leading up to the top, so the landing pad on top was originally dual purpose for SVs or HVs. I've decided I didn't want that. One of the things I wanted to do with the original, and actually let's go in here and have a look and you'll see what I mean when we get into the interior of this. But the interior is a lot of space for living. And I decided that the new role of that didn't need any living areas. So no chairs, no TVs, there's no bed, which is tucked behind here. Doesn't look quite as good with the new constructor model, but never mind. Doesn't matter now, does it? No bathroom and stuff. And then in here was the engineering with the warp drive. And what I decided is I would move the doors forward and then move the engineering forward to about here. Now that meant that the warp drive should end about here-ish, meaning that the area taken up by the warp drive in the original version I could turn into a garage bay. Now I don't think I've kept the proportions the same, so actually I think I might have slightly less room by maybe a block. But never mind, whatever. So there you go, that was the idea inside. Get rid of all of this junk, move the engineering to about here to here, and then further back is now a bay. And then the top, as you can see, there is still a landing pad on top, but that is for SVs only. And so thrusters recently got a rework for CVs. They now output slightly more thrust and they cost slightly less power and CPU, so I could get away with less of them than I could on the original. Right, I think that'll be enough of that. So that's the end of the first segment of this video. The next segment is going to be its role and its task equipment. So its role, as you can see there, and by the description on the workshop, is a personal ferry. Oh, give me one sec. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Happened to be right at the bottom, slightly annoyingly, but never mind. So if you go to my, well, you don't have to now because I've shown you in the video, but on my terms, definitions and conventions guide on the workshop, you'll see at the bottom I have types of transport vehicle, types of transport vehicles that carry other vehicles. So if we have a look at what a ferry is, I decided a long time ago that anything that is built to carry HVs and SVs would be a ferry if it's a civilian vehicle, which is why this is called a ferry. It might not necessarily make a lot of sense, but I set the rules. I have said quite often that I will follow the rules so long as it doesn't squash any creativity. So if I decide I want a light gunboat made of an SV instead of a CV, and I want it to have lots of turrets and rockets, I will ignore, the rules about what a gunboat should be. But, sometimes I will ignore rules, but most of the time I don't. So anyway, the thing that makes it a personal ferry, of course, is that it doesn't carry many of them. It carries you and one or two vehicles. So that is its role, to carry you and one or two vehicles. Well, probably two or three, actually. You could get one, maybe two in the garage bay, and then one or two SVs on the landing pad on top. And obviously the garage bay and the landing pad on top is how it achieves its role. As I always say, technically the thrusters, without those it wouldn't move, so it couldn't perform its role. But whatever. Okay, that'll be the end of that segment. The next segment is going to be its propulsion, handling and lift capacity. Right, propulsion, starting with forward thrust. It has two... yeah, that's going to get on my nerves. It has two medium thrusters. Braking and reverse, it has the same, two medium thrusters. Lateral, it has two small thrusters. Descent, it has two small thrusters again, one on each side, at the top of each thruster nacelle. And for lift, it has four medium thrusters, two on the bottom of each nacelle again. There you go. It also has no RCSs, and it does have a warp drive. Handling, so its mobility, I need to turn those on. Its mobility, starting with its maneuverability, it'll accelerate forwards at 56 meters per second squared. Same reverse, obviously, same number of the same type of thrusters. Lateral and descent is 24 meters per second squared. Again, same number of the same type of thrusters. And finally, lift is 111 meters per second squared of acceleration. Its agility, starting with its yaw, is 55 degrees per second. Pitch is 63. And roll is 74. Now, its lift capacities, so even with just four medium thrusters, it will operate in up to 11.3 G. Now, I'm pretty sure there is nothing in the vanilla game that will even come anywhere close to that. So you're going to be pretty much safe in a 4G environment. In 4Gs, it can lift 1.7 kilotons. It's 1.7, so it's 1,700 and some change tons. The ship itself weighs 603 tons, aka 0.603 kilotons. So 0.6 kilotons off from the 1.7 kilotons it can lift in 4G. Obviously, it can therefore lift a further 1.1 kilotons. So I doubt you'll come anywhere close to that. Yeah, let's give it a fly. I haven't done a fly in a tour for a little while. I'm going to turn on the pilot mode. So this is how she handles. Not actually. Let's turn away from the star. Yeah, it's okay considering. It doesn't feel particularly sluggish. Maybe with pilot mode off. See, even that doesn't feel that bad. Yeah. Right-o. How did I do? Terrible. Okay, that'll be the end of that segment then. So the next segment is going to be its power, fuel and air. As usual with my tours, I'm going to tell you about this stuff now and then show you where they all are later on when we get to the interior bit. So power, it has 2 small generators. Fuel, it has 8 tier 2s, so medium, and 1 tier 1, so small fuel tanks. It also has a pentaxid tank. As for air, it has a single small and 2 large O2 tanks, 2 ventilators and an O2 station. It is compartmentalized into 3 compartments: the cockpit, the engine room and the garage bay at the back. Okay, that'll be the end of that segment. The next segment is weapons, defences and construction. Weapons. It has 8 sentry turrets. That's a maximum that you can have. Those sentry turrets are set to what I consider to be my anti-personnel targeting configuration. So it'll target ground troops and predators. And also drones, since you can't separate drones from the ground troops, but whatever. It has no other weaponry. Defences, it has no shield, and its only armour is a small amount of hardened steel on the bottom protecting the core. And we will have a look at that now on the unpainted one, where we can also see its construction. Oh, I should really... there we go. It's a bit more clear now. So this is... I didn't do that either. There we go. Right, so this is what it's made of. It's basically all steel. It does not have one of my patented structural frames about it. So it is basically just all steel, apart from the little bits that is carbon composite. The bulkhead between the cockpit and the engine room is carbon composite, or at least the 2 bits of wall either side of the door. And then the wall in here is as well, between the engine, well, the gubbins and the garage bay here, and so is those details on the sides. Oh, and as I sometimes remember to say, the glass is the normal Windows L. It's not the hardened or armoured or whatever they call it. So there you go, nice and simple. Righto. That'll be the end of that segment. So the next segment is going to be its resource gathering, production and storage. So this is going to be another relatively quick segment, although I've just made it longer by saying that, and now this, and then this. And so resource gathering, it has none. Production, it has none, unfortunately. I would have liked to have put a constructor on it, but I decided... The role is... Oh, I forgot to mention this earlier. So it's a personal ferry, but that is a short duration transport. So there is no living quarters on board. So I would have liked to have get a constructor on just in case you crash land somewhere, i.e. you're shot down or whatever. But I couldn't, and I didn't cry about it. So, storage. It has 2 104,000 SU cargo containers, and it has a small fridge and an armour locker in the cockpit. Right, that'll be the end of that segment. The next segment is going to be its interior layout and any remaining devices. So, as usual, I shall do the any remaining devices that happen to be on the outside before we go in, since the outside is where we are already. Landing gear, headlights. I'm getting better at pointing those out. Speaking of lights, as usual, it comes fully flight regulation lighting compliant. We will start with the running lights, since those are the ones that are already on. There are 8 of them, basically one on each corner, and these let any observer know that the ship is powered, which is especially useful for when you use the power save function, which turns off these displays on the outside, because those are pretty obvious that the ship is still powered, but with power save on, they're off. And so if you don't intend to leave the ship on, even though it's in power save, I wanted a way for people to tell. And actually, I even just in creative mode, I found it useful myself. Welcome to my construction area. So the way I found it useful for myself, so sometimes I keep ships that I've recently built for reference, so I can see how I've done certain textures and the LCDs and stuff. And the LCDs is so basically I'll figure out the size I want for the LCD on the outside, and then find one that's similar in size or the same size. So quite often I'll turn a ship on, and then I'll grab the text from the screen, copy and paste, and then I'll work on the ship, and it'll be those flashing lights, the running lights. You can see them turning on and off. They'll catch my attention and remind me that I've actually left the ship on. So I actually find it useful just here, which is cool. Okay, so that was the running lights. Then we have the orientation lights. So first of all, we have the illuminated orientation panels that you can see dotted around. These act as the ship's formation lights for flying in formation with other ships, especially in low visibility. And as you can see, it's red, they are red on the port side, white on the stern, and green on the starboard side. Also yellow on the ventral side. Then we have the nav lights, which show any observer in which direction the ship is moving or pointing. Now, you could argue that the formation lights do that too, but whatever, the illuminated orientation panels. So, likewise to those, we have right on the left, we have red on the port side, white on the stern, and green on the starboard, and I will show you those turned on later on. Unlike the illuminated orientation panels, however, we do not have yellow on the bottom. We do, however, have something that's yellow, and that brings us on to the anti-collision lights. So we have 2 flavours of those: anti-collision beacons, which are yellow on the bottom and red on the top. I will again show you all these later on, turned on. So they let any observer know that the thrusters are powered and therefore the ship could move at any moment. And then we have the flight strobes, which are the second of the anti-collision lights, and these are the bright white flashing lights you see on the wingtips of planes. I have 2 on each side that strobe, hence the name flight strobes. They allow better visual acquisition at distance. Now, as I always say when I explain these, doesn't necessarily translate very well into the game, because unlike real life, the lights aren't visible from long distances like they are in real life. Quite often in the game you can see the ship before you can see the lights, but whatever. Right, So, speaking of the displays on the outside, we have 3 types. There's the main registry, the full registry with the class and type, and then the name display. So, the main registry, as you can tell, is WM for Wimpomania 14, because it's the 14th ship or vehicle in the Wimpomania line of vehicles. And then the number symbols here you would replace with the number of which yours is. As I always say, if you can be bothered, you can go onto the workshop, see how many subscribers there are to this vehicle, and then add 1. You add 1 because I have 1 and I'm not subscribed to the workshop. And assuming that you are the last person to subscribe, that should be your number. Of course, if you can't be bothered with that, then by all means ignore it. You can leave those as the number symbols. You can, of course, change it to a number that means something to you. Your house number, your credit card PIN, your date of birth, whatever. No one's going to know or care. Then we have this display, which, as I said, is the full registry, which, as you can tell, includes the main registry. If you care, the WMF stands for Wimpo Manufacturing. The TFP stands for Transport Ferry Personal. It's a transport vehicle, specifically a ferry, and specifically a personal one of those, which is one of those. And then that bit I've already explained. And then, of course, the class and the type. And then, of course, we have the name. So, generally speaking, it's fairly obvious where these LCD projectors are. In fact, there are no other LCD projectors on the exterior, so it's only going to be these. It's just a matter of which one is that one and which one of those two is that one, for example. But you can figure that out just by clicking on it and seeing what's written in it. You see, that just says WM14, so that's obviously that one and not that one, because that says more than that, you see. So, you can rename your ship, the ISV Tinkerbell or whatever you want to call it, the Boatface, for example. In case you care, ISV stands simply for Interstellar Vehicle. Nothing too exciting. Of course, you can also name your ship there. As I always say, technically the ISV Pathfinder would have been mine, or at least with the original. I suppose technically now this is the Mark II. So I suppose mine wouldn't be the Pathfinder anymore, so I would need to find a name for mine. But of course, if you want to rename that to simply, WM14 Pathfinder, then by all means you can do that. Or the ISV Pathfinder, also that's fine. So that's all of those. Do you know what? I'm going to start with the landing pads on top, I think. So, we have a large-ish... let's turn the signals back on. Right. Obviously, motion sensor controlled lights up on the landing pad. One there and one there. There's only 2 really for symmetry. Whatever. As you can see, there are some doors that lead into elevators. The elevators themselves lead down into the garage bay. The astute among you will notice that there is no way from the garage bay to the cockpit at the front. I really tried. Unfortunately, so I could have made the ship bigger, I suppose, but I wanted this ship to be as small as I could. And unfortunately, I then couldn't give you any passageways going from front to back due to the radiation given us by the warp drive. So I just thought, whatever, you can go out and walk round on the ground, I suppose, or in space, jetpack, EVA. So that was in there. Oh, I suppose I could include this, actually. So, the size of the landing pad, well, clearly it's 5 wide. 5, 6, 11 long. Yeah, five blocks wide by 11 long, which means the SV that could fit in here would be 10 wide and 22 long. Without, of course, removing the railings. You may have seen in the screenshots there is a gunboat up here, and I've had to remove the railings to fit it. In here, obviously also 5 wide, and then length is 6, 3, and another 3, yep. Oh, and height in here is 3. Alright. Oh, and the garage bay door, I've used shutters in order to limit the amount of space that the door takes up when it's open. So it's well, as you can see, the entry into the garage bay is about 2.5 blocks of the large grid size, and therefore 5 in the small grid. Right, let's go to the front. Oh, and as you can probably tell as well, the doors and the ramps and some of the lights are on motion sensors. Likewise here, ramp, the lights either side of the door are on that motion sensor there. The doors are of course on a CV automatic anyway, so they're not on a sensor. Here is the cockpit. Obviously we have a pilot seat, we have some LCDs, we have some equipment, O2, fridge, medic station, armor locker. There's your ammo box up there. The sensor for the lights in here is there. Obviously a vent. There is a switch there that does the retractable roof. Now you can use this either for EVAing out of when you're in space, or of course deploying your drone out of. Aye. So there we go, that's that. And then in the engine room, I have a warning sign to let you, or to remind you that it's going to be hot and radiation in here. So here we have one of the 104 KSU cargo containers. The other one is of course over here. We have a tier 1, so a small fuel tank, and a small O2 tank, in case you like interacting with those bits of your ship manually. There is the pentaxid tank, again in case you like manually interacting. Warp drive is there, motion sensor for that light is there, and there is the projector for that. And then that's it, really? Yes. Right, so that'll be the end. Oh, hang on. Hang on, no, it's not the end, actually. I need to show you what's inside here. Actually, we'll go in the warp drive. So, there is fuel there, either side of the stuff in the middle. The stuff in the middle behind the pentaxid tank is the core. I didn't show you on... Oh, I'll go back over there in a minute. The core, wireless, connector, and the detector. There's the small amount of hardened steel that protects the core, because there's the core. Let's get a better view of it. So there you go. And the generators are on the outside of the container extensions, sort of in the connection point with the nacelles, kind of there, as you can see. And then in the nacelles themselves, to fill up a bit of space, so do be careful if you're getting shot at, fuel tank and another O2 tank, bigger one this time. Oh, and there's the gravity generator behind that ventilator block. Right, there we go, that'll be the end of that segment. Hooray. Right, so the next segment is going to be shortcuts and signals. Okay, as usual, with my ships, please don't auto-group the devices, because I have set them up in custom device groups, and I've done that because some of the device group shortcuts rely on the custom device groups to work properly. for example, the anti-collision beacons wouldn't work in a auto-grouped setup. Right. Device groups, the first one, as usual, is propulsion, etc. That will, of course, turn on all of the thrusters and the anti-collision beacons and nothing else. Then we have the turrets, which, of course, will turn on and off the sentry turrets. Oh. There we go. And I will show you where they are. I didn't actually show you, did I, in the weapons bit? I just said there was 8. So, there's one on the chin, and then ventral as well, one at the back. Then there's one on the side of each thruster nacelle, as well as one on each side of the cockpit. And then there's one on top of the cockpit and one at the back by the tail. Should have shown you that earlier, but I didn't. Next one down is the artificial gravity, which of course turns on and off the gravity generator. So you can turn it off and save some power if you're in a gravity well, for example, of a planet or of a space station. And then finally is air vents. Now, in case this is the first tour of mine you have seen, I will cover this, but in case you have seen more of mine, I'll do it really quickly, as quickly as I can. So you don't have to sit through a long-winded explanation. So if we have a look at power left and turn oxygen off, it doesn't change, because although the ventilators are no longer blowing air into the inside, the ventilator blocks themselves are still powered. So I've given you an air vent switch so that if you're in a breathable atmosphere, you can turn them off and save some power. Next then, we have the signals. The power save is at the top as usual. Oh, those of you who are familiar with my builds will recognise that I have rearranged these. Normally I would have blank ones in between, but there are so few. And actually I did get confused with the heads-up display here. On SVs, that bottom bit would be on a separate LCD screen to this top bit. And I thought that was going to be the case as well in a CV, forgetting, because it's been a while, that actually they fit on one LCD screen in a CV. But that's one of the reasons why it's been rearranged. Normally they would be in the same places, so air vents would always be down here. And then I would leave some blank where other things would go, like max lift and emergency power and drills would be left as blank. Right, power save. We have a little LCD display here that shows you everything that they do, but basically turning power save on will turn off all of the motion sensors and levers, with exception to the one that controls this door, unless I have made a mistake. I have not made a mistake. Hooray. That's so that if you've left it in power save, you can still drive a vehicle in, you know, when you're getting ready to leave or whatever. Motion sensors, so obviously that means all of the lights will be off too. It'll also turn off all of the LCD projectors, and it will turn off the Wi-Fi. Right, next one down then is nav lights. Actually, we'll do these two both together, nav lights and flight strobes. So the nav lights, as I said earlier, we have red on the port side, white on the stern side, and green on the starboard side. That's the nav lights. And then you can see the flight strobes flashing away. 2 there and 2 on the other side. And then lastly we have the headlights. Now, like usual, I say this, well, I'm getting better at saying this, I quite often forget. So obviously I know you can turn the spotlights on and off with the default keybind shortcut, which I believe is L for Lima. But if you turn them on and then get out your cockpit seat and you're walking around and then you realise you've left them on, I didn't want you to have to get back into the ship and back into the seat to turn them off, which is why I give you a switch. Right, that's the end of that segment then. So the next segment is going to be CPU and upgrading. Okay, CPU, it is tier 1 CPU, and I would have liked a few more thrusters really, but it's not too bad. I removed some to get it under tier 1, and as you can see it's not far off. That does mean it could be used as a starter CV. Obviously there are some limitations like having no constructor, and some people like having grow plots on their starter CVs. I personally don't like having grow plots on CVs for a few reasons, so I won't bother going into them now. Another thing, of course, is that there's no, other than being able to heal and respawn, there's no other medical devices, so it's not particularly good for doing things like carrying a tank over to an enemy POI to raid it, for example. But it could still be used as a starter CV, sort of. The next thing that limits it for that use is, of course, there is no built-in upgrade path. So there is no empty space earmarked for anything. I mean, that doesn't mean, of course, if you don't want to carry around any HVs, you could, of course, fill this with a container extension and have a... yeah, I'm pretty sure you could get a full 320k in there. So there you go. That upgrade, yeah, that's everything. Righto, so that'll be the end of that segment. The next and last segment then is going to be any other info. Right, so the first thing I'm going to cover actually is an abandoned concept. Whoops. So, this is what it was going to look like, sort of, kind of. So it was similar to how the beginner came about. So here is the beginner, and then here is, actually let's find one that's a full ship. Here is a beginner. A beginner is called a beginner because it's a bigger version of the beginner. So it came time to update the beginner, and I started to build this big ship, and I kept looking back at the original thinking it's such a shame that the new one is going to be bigger, because I would have liked it to have been a similar size. So I ended up releasing them as different ships. Well, this was similar. I kept looking back at the original thinking this new ship is too big. So the reason it was big, getting bigger, is because I wanted it to have a living area inside, and on top of that it had thrusters in between the cockpit and the living area, so that took up extra space as well. And then we have cargo, and then behind that is the warp drive, and then I wanted the garage bay to be on the back, so actually it would have been maybe this big out to here-ish, out to about there. So it would have been quite a lot bigger than the original. And again, I was building it and I mean, I'm not too happy with the shape, to be honest. I mean, I could have done something with it, especially, I mean, even just painting it does quite a bit to disguise it. But I was thinking, it's getting too big. I don't want this ship to really be that big. Its role is just to transport a few vehicles around between stars. It's not supposed to be something you would live in for a month, you know? So I decided to scrap that and just update the original. What else? So the damage texture I'm going to talk about like I normally do. So I paint the whole ship with that colour in that texture, which means that when and then obviously I paint the exterior and the interior, but that means that when you lose a block, the surfaces of the blocks that get exposed to me looks like smouldering metal. It certainly looks more like damage than that, because that is just textures that are found elsewhere on the ship. So although you might notice that there is a block missing, it doesn't look like damage. So that's why I do that. It looks more realistic, is the point. The naming convention of my ships, of course, as I keep saying, I consider myself to be a noob at building, N-O-O-B. And as a result, when I came up with the Wimpomania design, that is the wraparound cockpit and these basic nacelle shapes, I decided that all of the ships within the Wimpomania line would be named either synonyms of noob, N-E-W-B, someone who is new at something, or synonyms of someone who is the first to do something. So so that's why you end up with names like the Initiate and the Pathfinder and the Cadet and the Probationer and the Frontiersman and the Freshman and the Beginner. The next ship along is called the Pleb. That's going to be WM14. And again, that's simply someone who is new, although it's usually used as a bit of an insult, but whatever. There is no other paints to show you. I haven't given you any other colours to pick from. There is a spare colour in the palette there, which is at the moment just set to white. You can of course do something with that. I mean, there's also nothing stopping you from changing these in the configure options bit. Right, I think that is everything to talk about. Blinkies. How to turn off the blinkies. This will be the last thing. Nearly forgot. So, obviously the nav lights and the flight strobes are easy to deal with if you don't like them, because you just don't turn them on yourself. Nothing else turns them on. We'll talk about the running lights next. That's the white ones on all 8 corners that we can see coming on and off in the background there. If you don't like those, scroll to the bottom of the device groups and you will find reg lights, and you're looking for running lights. Deactivate the group and then that's it. They will never come on again. And finally, the anti-collision beacons. So if you don't like the fact that you get a red flashing and a yellow flashing light on when you turn the thrusters on, assuming of course you use this, I should have pointed this out earlier, but never mind. The only difference between this switch and this switch is that this switch does the anti-collision beacons as well. So, of course, if you're using that switch, you don't need to worry about the anti-collision beacons. If you're using this switch and you don't like the anti-collision beacons, I would normally suggest going to here and removing the shortcut from the anti-collision beacon device group. But actually, I would suggest maybe doing that. Oh, the one thing, of course, that makes this more usable, assuming, of course, it works, because it quite often doesn't, is that I can turn on with the shortcuts listed there, the thrusters. So I just did that combination. Yeah, it worked. Hello. So my thrusters are on. So if you're using that shortcut to turn them on and you don't like the anti-collision beacons, then, like I said, just remove the shortcut from the device group. So remove that, like that. Of course, if they are on at the time, just deactivate them with that switch. Right, one last thing to do, like I like doing in my tour videos, is to update or to publish it to the workshop. In this case, it's update on camera. Of course, I'm going to leave it private so I can do the pictures and the description. There we go. Right, so thank you very much for taking an interest in the Pathfinder class. I hope you get some use out of it, and hopefully I will see you in another video for a different build. So thank you again, and goodbye.